Right, so in today's video, I want to talk about the 4 lawn care mistakes you're going to want to avoid making now that it's March. But before we get into that, if you are new to this channel, then feel free to go back and have a look at the back catalogue of videos that I have. I've got a full renovation of how we've transformed what was effectively a mud bath in a new build garden into a space with a couple of patios. We've got a retaining wall, some raised beds, and some half decent lawns as well. I've got lots of lawn care on this channel too, so if you haven't already, consider subscribing, follow along with these garden videos. So let's get into it then. So the first mistake you're going to want to avoid making now that it's March is actually getting on and scarifying your lawn too early. Scarification is quite an aggressive process that you put your grass through, and the main aim is to remove thatch from a lawn, but also as well to thin out the sward slightly too. When you get on Scarify, you're doing a lot of damage to the sward, and you've got to be confident that your grass is going to be able to bounce back and recover. With the temperatures in March, they're really inconsistent, and you can't fully guarantee that your lawn's going to bounce back effectively and quickly enough as well. You're going to want to wait till possibly the end of the month to even start to consider it, because you can end up doing more damage than good. If you got on and scarified your space today, there's a few problems that you might have. The soils at this time of year are quite soft, so you're going to end up churning up a lot of that soil and actually ripping out some of your grass plants. You're going to thin out your sward, and that's going to mean that your lawn's more susceptible to weed grasses, to other weeds that might encroach. All we want to sort of do to our lawns at the moment is, give it a little bit of a feed. We're kind of nurturing it out of that dormant phase that it's been in through winter. We're trying to sort of focus on the soils. How can we improve them? How can we improve the microbial activity? How can we get these plants nice and strong before we do any renovation work? Because you don't know if we're going to have a frost towards the end of this month. The second mistake you're going to want to avoid making is very similar to the first one, and that's overseeding your lawn too early. It might seem like March is a good time to get out and overseed the lawn and do a renovation, because we do have days like today where the sun's out, we have blue skies, and it feels pretty warm as well. It doesn't feel too bad. However, it's not optimal yet for seed. Seed needs anywhere from 7 degrees to 10 degrees in order to germinate and mature properly. Even though we have fairly warm temperatures towards the late afternoon now, those temperatures aren't consistent enough in order for that seed to germinate. If you do chuck some seed down, then the likelihood is that some of it eventually will germinate. It'll just sit there in the sward until the temperatures start to increase. But what will happen is, first of all, you're going to just give a boss snack to the birds. You're going to be feeding them, but also, because the soils at the moment are still quite wet, it's going to mean that a lot of those grass seeds, they are going to rot. And if you end up top dressing it with soil and chucking seed down now, you'll end up with what will just look like a dirt patch for the next few months really. Whereas if you wait till sort of mid to late April, even into May's a brilliant time to overseed. It's not just about getting it to germinate, it's about getting that plant to be strong and to survive. If you sow seed too soon and then we get a bit of snow towards like the back end of March, which can happen, then it can just kill off the new plants that you've got, and then you're just back to square one. The third mistake you're going to want to avoid making in March is getting on with weed killer too soon. There is absolutely no reason to put any weed killer on your lawn in March, because the simple fact is the weeds aren't actively growing. You're going to want to wait until, like I've said for all these other things, till mid-April, even ideally really into May, before you start killing off your weeds. If you spray weed killer down now and that weed isn't actively growing, it's not going to do what it says on the tin. A way that a lot of weed killers work is you're putting a hormone down onto the space. That weed absorbs, that product absorbs that hormone and almost grows itself to death. It almost tries to grow far too fast and ends up killing the thing off. Even if you can see some weeds in your lawn, if they're not actively growing, that product is going to do next to nothing, and it's going to mean then that you're going to have to do another application as we get into May, and you're putting then almost too much weed killer down onto your lawn, because it will do more harm than good to your soils over time if you're over applying these products. You'll see on the back of them, they say often apply once a year or twice a year max. You don't want to be getting on and doing a lot of applications of it, and you'll just end up wasting product, doing damage to your soil if you do it too early. And the final mistake you're going to want to avoid making this March is to do with online content, to do with YouTube videos, TikToks, Instagram Reels. What one person does to their lawn doesn't necessarily mean it's what you're going to have to do to your lawn. Even though I do a lot of how-to guides and I show you what I do to my spaces and explain how they can be beneficial to you. What you do to your space will entirely depend on the type of space you've got. First of all, is the type of soil you've got. Have you got a fairly, sandy, free draining soil that drains really well? Have you got heavy clay soils like I've got in this garden? Your grass variety will depend on what you do as well. Have you got a creep and bent grass? Do you have a mixture of bent and fescue? Have you got a mixture of sort of rye and fescue? Or have you just got a purely rye grass lawn? That'll come into play as well. How much sunlight your grass gets. You can see the lawn behind me has a little bit now, and this side here gets literally no sun still now, even though we're at the start of March, whereas the lawn at the front gets sun all year round, even in the middle of winter, in December time, in January time. And the final main factor is how well your soil drains too. And that'll obviously, again, depend on what type of soil you have, but also, do you have any drainage in place? I've got a drainage pipe in this lawn in front of me now. The one behind me has absolutely no drainage, and it does struggle through the winter. So when you are watching online content, even videos like what I'm going to be posting over the next few months, it's take it with a pinch of salt. It's look at it and say, is it relevant to my lawn? Is it going to impact my lawn? There is not a step-by-step guide as to, if everyone does this one thing, everyone's going to get the same results. You can all follow the advice on these YouTube videos that I post, and you could end up with literally the most pristine, perfect lawn. You could end up with a bit of a mud bath, because, like I've said, there's so many factors that go into it. So do your research. Don't just watch my videos, watch all the other lawn care channels on this platform too, and give yourself a rounded view of what great lawn care looks like. I'm a novice at all of this. I assume that a lot of people who watch the content that I produce are in a very similar position to me, or in a similar position to what I was in a few years back when I knew very little about lawn care. This year on this channel, I'm going to be posting loads of content to do with different grass varieties, different soil types, how to manage your lawn in a really fairly straightforward way, giving simple advice that you might choose to use, you might choose to adapt. So thanks for watching today's video. Like I said, subscribe if you haven't already. Like the video if you have enjoyed it, and as ever, my Instagram is in the description below if you'd like to follow me on there. I post loads of updates about how things are getting on in the garden, whether it be the bulbs over here, whether it be the grass, or any new tools that I end up picking up. And I probably have too many in the garage, but sometimes it's good to watch someone on YouTube buying things and trying things out before you do yourself. So yeah, finally, thanks for watching.